Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar. My name is Anthony Nigro, and I have the pleasure of being your host for today's discussion. Our topic for today is Unleashing Digital Potential, how Monash University's design system transformed their online presence. So universities need to provide a consistent and considered digital experience that abstracts complexity. Prospective students are making decisions about an investment that will have lasting impact on their life. And in today's post-COVID world, the competition for students has intensified. Therefore, digital is central to the decision-making process that can span years. Although there are some challenges for universities in providing a good and consistent digital experience. Universities have many distributed teams that all contribute to digital. That's thousands of staff members all contributing content on a daily basis. And they all have different perspectives, different objectives for the content that they are producing. This leads to many websites and tens or hundreds of thousands of pages of content. Not to mention, universities have complex technology that houses critical data that is required to drive a good digital experience. So how do you work through all these challenges? The answer is a design system that governs your digital experience for all digital touchpoints. Design systems provide a framework for design, tone of voice, and experience that will allow you to have consistency across content that is created from any part of the organization. To understand this further, we're hearing from our customer, Monash University. Monash University is ranked in the top 1% of universities globally. Most recently, they were ranked number 37 in the QS World Rankings for 2025. They have over 86,000 students with over 490,000 alumni spread across more than 150 countries. They've also got 3 international teaching locations, 6 campuses, and more than 100 partner universities. And their research has global impact, with over 150 active fields of research, 10 faculties, and over 4,700 higher degree by research students. And Monash University and Squiz have only just shared our 10-year anniversary together. To talk more about their journey, I will shortly introduce Amin Foda, but before that, I will cover off some housekeeping. So today's webinar is going to be recorded and you'll receive a copy of the email within the next day. Of course, if you have any difficulties, we've got the chat just on the Zoom session. So if you need to reach out, please do so. After we go through some initial questions by me, there will be Q&A that we'll be hosting with Amin. So please make sure that you're using the Q&A window that's just located down the bottom of the bar. Raise any questions. Amin will probably take questions towards the end, but please make sure as they're coming up, raise any questions that you do have. Towards the end of the session, we are going to be having a survey. So please make sure that you submit your feedback. So wait till the end for that survey to come through. And now I have the pleasure to introduce you all to Amin Foda. So Amin, do you want to just say hello quickly?
Oh, thanks, Anthony. Thanks for the introduction and happy 10-year anniversary, I guess.
Excellent. It's been a tremendous journey. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. And I've been here for a big chunk of it, which is always great. But thanks for having me on the webinar. I guess I'd better start with introducing myself and what I do at the university so people know. But I'm the Director of Marketing Infrastructure. The function is really established with a key mission to harness technology and develop rich insights to support meaningful data-driven experiences for our audiences. So it's kind of an integral part of what we do is focusing on our audiences. I'm responsible for running all the automation and personalization programs across the university, which is exciting. That's where you get to do a lot of the fun stuff. And it's across all of the components of the journey. So CX, UX, data science and analytics, market research and intelligence, admissions and marketing technologies, personalization, governance, and obviously web and email channels are key focuses for me. So it is really fun to have this responsibility because I get to see everything almost end to end.
Awesome. Yeah, that is pretty cool. I know I'm always staggered by the size of your team and I guess, the kind of work that you're doing. Um, But I think, yeah, central to that is really having some, great governance in place, as you talked about, but leveraging data. So maybe we'll just start getting into the questions, Amin, and let's talk about your journey and probably some of the triggers to creating a really strong design system.
Absolutely. And I think it's key to note from the beginning of when I joined around about 6 years ago. I came in and the university had a very aggressive personalization strategy set in place. It was only started 6 months before I started with our new CMO. And we wanted to really focus on our two core channels that tend to have a lot of touch points, so web and email. Um, it was important for us to actually change and refresh, and we came in with the concept of digital first in the experiences and what we wanted to do. And we knew that a lot of things haven't really changed for a while in the university, and there were a lot of fragmentation. So we wanted to kind of go from a fragmented experience to a coordinated experience to then a federated experience where it's kind of open for everyone to manage and enabling them to do the job, but keeping that consistency alive. And it was quite, I guess, quite an interesting start to the journey because I came in with a blank canvas, really. It was only early days of it. We were starting to form the strategy, and we wanted to make sure that we kind of tackle a few things. So the first thing that we had to do was obviously make sure that we build our project goals or our objectives. And we started with changing the mindset and making sure that everyone moves away from the fragmentation into an audience centric and kind of a data aware approach to what we're doing, which was a very good starting point. Um, since then, we kind of started gathering insights into our audiences and looking at the strategic data that we have, user research, and validating all of those both internally and externally. So it's not driven just by a keen view of personalization. Um, we also have to kind of consider our brand identity and our experience within the online ecosystem. As you know, universities, and you mentioned it earlier, we tend to have a lot of websites, and that's just a function of the diversity that we have in our community. So we wanted to make sure that wherever you go and wherever you engage with the university, it is still, you can notice that it's Monash. You can notice that it's the brand that you trust and that you're coming to across the board. Um, and obviously, wanting to make sure that we develop a personalized experience, as I said, and allowing the visitors to kind of engage with the content that is relevant to them. We have a lot of content as a university. We're not shy from having any content out there. And it's important to make sure that we're putting the right content in front of the right people in the right context. Our audiences are not necessarily mutually exclusive, unfortunately, or fortunately in some instances, because it allows for more fun, really. But a prospective student could be an alumni if they've studied with us an undergraduate course and they're coming back for a postgraduate course. Now they are two different types of audiences that we have to keep in mind. Our staff can also be students or alumni. Our partners are mostly alumni, actually, that tend to come and partner with us, but they could also be influencing audiences. So by keeping that in mind, developing a personalized experience makes it difficult, but also more fun. And lastly, like the reduction of duplicated content and making sure that our web presence is not just full of content that people see all the time. It's kind of making sure that we isolate redundant and unnecessary content away from what we're doing. So that's really what kind of triggered us at the beginning and what we kind of looked at from an objectives perspective to build a new framework of how we want to expand our presence, I guess, or enhance it, for lack of a better word. Um, and we know we have a lot of visitations. So we know people come and see our website, they come and engage with it. You could have anywhere between 1.6 million visits a day sometimes, sorry, a week. So high volumes, and we want to make sure that we're giving them what they need.
Yeah, so that's there's a lot in that because I remember 10 years ago, I think there was over 450 different websites, and consolidation obviously was key. And that point that you make, like no duplication of content is obviously extremely important to make sure that you've got a good, concise experience. But when you went into that goal of personalization, like did you think about, the entire experience, or, how did you start with personalization on top of that?
It's a really good question. You can get lost in personalization if you think about the whole concept of it, because it goes beyond the hi Amin piece, obviously. So we made sure that we actually focus on four key things to help us with our personalization journey. Really the experience that we're trying to deliver and keeping that end goal in mind. It is important to actually maintain that view. When you come and develop elements, you always want to break them down, but you want to break them down to an extent that is achievable, but still adds up as part of a big ecosystem that you're trying to deliver to. The other part was governance. Governance is really key. And governance is not just from um, making sure that people just do what we ask for. It's actually making sure that everything's done within the framework and foundations that we're trying to establish. So looking at the governance across having clear templates and guidelines of how to use it, brand guidelines as well implemented in there, the data that is accessible and available for everyone to use, including our personas or our personalization attributes that can be used. And all of these things help reduce the fragmentation that could occur. The data, as I mentioned, so making sure you're using the right data at the right time, it's quite important. And there are three core parts of the data that people tend to neglect. So you have the behavioral data that we see on the website, but you also have the claim data. People come and tell you what they're looking for, what they're wanting from you. So why not use that to help that vision that you have around personalization? And then the derived data. So we, as I said, I do have a data science function. They actually help me predict a lot of variables for individuals and help us guide the conversation with them based on those predictions. So these three core data sets, for lack of a better word, help you actually build the personalization view that you can do for individuals, and as much as possible individualize the experience to them. And the last thing that I will say is change management. Now that's a very important part, especially at a university. You're going and introducing new things to people that have been doing things in certain ways sometimes for a while. And that is quite important for us to get them on the journey. It's not something that you want to just say, hey, here it is, go forth and prosper. You can't just do that. So that's another part that we had to think about. And look, like it came off the back of it as well. Our content authors sharing their frustrations about their experience with managing their content in the website itself. So we had to do something to help them because they're the content specialists. They need to be able to really promote their products, and we need to make sure that it's consistent.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So if we, to go very literal, so you've got, a design system that is available. I think it's called Graphite, and that sort of had iterations from there. So in essence, you're providing this tooling out to, the wider university there for authoring, and that's got sort of its a rule set within that. So that's how you generally will have these interactions, and you're using the same components or similar components to build out these experiences. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. So in the design system that we developed, so we came off a template that we've called Mango. Apparently, the team previously really liked naming the templates after fruits. Moving from that to Graphite was a big shift for the team, just trying to move away. from that. But Graphite was designed and built with that purpose of giving flexibility to the content authors. It is making sure that we kind of keep a consistent approach from a top and tail perspective, and giving them the flexibility with over, I think we're now at around about 200 different components that the team can use to promote and present their content on the website. It didn't stop at the website. I should state that we've actually taken some of the uh, content component designs into email as well to create that same modular concept into our email templates. And having that consistency was very important for us, because it kind of shows that the design system can translate between the two channels quite effectively. It was a very interesting shift in mindset for our stakeholders, but it was a really good shift because we actually got them to co-design with us. And we got our audiences involved in some instances where we could. So it was actually a co-collaborative effort from all parties. And doing that, it helped them actually be part of the journey and invest in it, and be proud of what was delivered at the end holistically.
Yeah, no, I think that's important to note. Obviously, it is a big team effort. Obviously, at Monash and even the team at Squiz, sort of all working together towards this broader goal. So going back to that point that you made around change management, um, advice for people doing this themselves. Obviously, universities have complex structures. There are a lot of people to work across. Do you have any guidance or advice for people, looking to make this kind of a change? How do you work across, the broader business and make sure that you're giving good advice, but also listening? Do you have any advice or tips around that?
Yeah, look, absolutely. I can tell you that we have around about approximately 350 content authors on Squiz alone. So obviously there's a lot of people out there that use it. We needed to hear what they had to say. We needed to know from their perspective, because regardless of how big my team is, we will not be able to actually capture everything without their input. So the first part that we've done, we actually got all of the stakeholders to come and tell us what their challenges have been. We've held workshops with them to kind of understand which components they like, which components they don't like, which components they think are missing for them. And when you have 10 faculties, there's obviously differences in how each one wants to present their content. So for example, like our art design and architecture faculty are really keen on a gallery view, are really keen on showcasing their students' work as well, which is unique to that faculty. It's not something that's available for every other faculty. But we went and spoke to each one of them. We actually got them to give us all their input. We got them to vote on priorities as well. So they're kind of invested in what we're prioritizing to develop. And we also got them to participate in the funding for that actually drives a lot more buy-in when
Got a bit
they're
of
giving
skin in
some
the
of their
game.
money away.
Yeah, a
Yeah.
bit of skin in the game. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. They kind of know it's like, all right, I'm paying for this as well. So it's really important for it to come to be right, or as right as we can get it, really. Um, so it was quite an interesting move away from the us and them concept, move away from we're giving you what we need, just go away and do it. We're now all a single team looking collectively at our website and looking at how we can better the experience for our audiences, irrespective of where you're coming from as an individual staff member. So that was really good, and having a clear comms plan and a clear kind of project timeline, and setting the expectations from the start of what we need from them, when we're going to go back to them and ask for questions or provide them with updates. It was a very extensive piece of work, and it took us a few months to do it, but we were quite pleased with it because they were very invested in the whole journey.
I think, what I experienced as we went through that process, I think, what was facilitated was a really strong culture of of just best practice, creating the best experience that you can. And it wasn't about opinion. So I've seen in other circumstances where it almost becomes like a battle between individuals around, my opinion around digital is stronger than yours. So I think, fostering that culture was essential to the success that you've probably seen as well. So if you had to do it again, yeah, if you had to go back and sort of start, so as a large university, like what kind of an approach would you take? Where would you start? Would you start at sort of corporate site, lower level sites? Like, do you have any advice for anyone if you had a quick think about that now?
Um, I would still start where I started, even though it was a big challenge because we basically went with the corporate high level view and then went downwards from there. And the only reason is because if you don't have that view of the full scope that you want to deliver to, what will happen if you go small to a small site? You could miss out the requirements from other areas or the requirements across the university. Um, it can always be done in reverse as long as you get the requirements holistically and then start small potentially, just to see how it will go and see the impact that it will deliver. There's nothing wrong with that, but I wouldn't start with gathering requirements or working with just a small subsite in the first instance. I think what we did, the benefit of it was, as I said, everyone got invested in it and everyone made sure that they share their opinions and their requirements to it. So it was a good approach from there. And when we did, we rolled it out slowly. Like we didn't just go change the whole template and roll it out across the board all of a sudden. We've actually rolled it out on the top level domain. Then we went to the faculty level sites, and then we went to the campaign side. So we kind of trickled the delivery of it across, I think, 4 or 5 months of doing that. And it was still great because when we started doing that, we've identified some of the hurdles that we had to quickly pivot and adjust certain components to accommodate changes that were not considered when we did the initial view. So I would say start with the big vision, make sure that you get everyone's input into it, but then like implement it in kind of a staggered approach.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I think, based on our many conversations, and I think that focus on the data out the other end is really, really important. I know one of the early things that you started doing as well was looking at, the data going in. So, where are people submitting forms and information and making sure that it goes to the right endpoint. But you did say, you're squarely focused on the data. Is there anything you want to, share about, your data approach or what you consider essential around sort of data retention?
Um, I guess make sure that you use the data for the right thing. There's a lot of vanity metrics out there that people tend to use to showcase performance, but in some instances, those don't make sense to look at. So focus on your key business objectives and what you're trying to achieve. If it's a conversion metric, great. Look at that, follow through with it, and see how you get to it from a pathway perspective. But don't look at things that don't matter in the current world that we're in, especially with the privacy obligations that we have. All the data tends to be directional, and make sure that you test it and validate over time. So we were doing a lot of experimentation during that stages during some of the stages of the project, because we were concerned that a big change might have an impact or might not. So we tended to focus on little changes, especially when it was a complete design change, and making sure that we focus on how it impacts our core metrics, like our lead acquisition, for example, was one of them, and how we made changes to our study website in a experimentational fashion, I would say. So it's important to focus on those core metrics and look at beyond what certain data points give you at times, especially in the web environment nowadays.
Cool. All right. I might just take some of these public comments or questions that we've got, and I've got some more questions for you, but I'll just start asking some of them. So the graphite design system, is that itself publicly available, or how does that work?
It's available across the university. It's our system. um, so it's built specifically for Monash. So it's not in the public domain for from that perspective, but it is available for all of our staff members to use.
Yep, that's cool. All right, I've answered that one. Next one's a little bit long, but I think you did talk about this a little bit in terms of your data, but how do you measure the success and ROI of implementing a design system in your organization? Have you noticed how much time is saved, for example, or using a design system approach?
It's a really good question. I think ROI is a little bit harder to measure when you're doing a change in one channel, especially when we know that a lot of things tend to affect um, the return on what you do. However, as I said, with the experimentation that we've done, we were able to show the uplift that occurs. And in one instance, I think from memory, and don't quote me on that, but we've improved our conversion rate by, I think it was 2%. And it sounds low, but that equates to around about an estimated revenue of 13 million if we convert it. So it's actually quite big impact for us as a university. And then we were very fortunate that following the change of graphite, we've had an external entity that we haven't engaged with come to us and tell us that Monash was named the top performer in the personalization category that year, which was quite impressive. So we did kind of have return, obviously, coming from there. And we were also in the top 25% of university websites for ease of use and sentiment, their experience, the sentiment that they had around their experience. Again, two things that were not planned. We didn't expect it. And when this entity came to us saying, here are some of your results from a recent survey that we've done, that was impressive as well. So it shows that there's returns, even though we didn't measure it.
Yeah, and look, I'd say as much as, yes, you can probably count the hours that's saved as well, but I think the agility that I see for your team as well, like the fact that you can handle anything that's coming your way, like I think that also speaks a lot. I know we did a project in common around that COVID time, and we were able to turn out websites really, really quick in response to COVID and everything that's happening by having consistent design components that we can use there as well. All
Yeah,
right.
look, absolutely. And I think the time part is quite interesting because even when we started extending the design system to co-branded websites, it was much swifter and quicker to do. So that was quite a really good piece that we didn't have to build completely from scratch the template.
Cool. All right. Next question we have here is, do you still have legacy sites on older design system implementations? I'm going to answer that first though. So I remember when we started working together 10 years ago, there was no consistency around design at that point. And I think Monash originally was one of the first universities to have a web presence. And when we started working 10 years ago, that same design from like the late 90s was still in play. So I can say that that's all been cleaned up now and there's a lot more consistency. But back to the question, do you still have legacy sites on all the design systems or anything like that?
Yes, is the simple answer. Um, the and they're not on legacy design systems that were designed by us. Some websites have been developed outside of our ecosystem, and when you have over 2,000 websites, that is bound to happen, and it's all right. However, all of the priority websites that were identified have been migrated. So it's key to know that sometimes there are low-hanging fruits, and it's okay to have them separated if needed, especially if it's a sub brand of the business that you don't want to or where we don't manage, because we have a lot of partnerships, as we said in the beginning. Sometimes we're bound by the partnerships agreement rather than our ecosystem.
Awesome. All right. And the lucky last question, and this is, I'll sort of take one of the audience's question and morph it a little bit. What does the future hold? So if, today you've got a design system that's very consistent, graphite, what's next? And you don't have to
Um,
give away the secret sauce. Obviously, I understand there might be other universities watching as well.
yeah, look, I think we're still powering through building more components, advancing our personalization. Um, I want to break it all up and make it really a unique experience for each audience member when they come into the website, that no two um, people will see the same thing. Now, that's a big challenge because I want to create or curate the content dynamically as people are moving around the website. Um, but that's the ultimate vision that I have for the university, that it's always adjusting itself based on what we know and what you tell us and what you do.
Cool. And so obviously that means, the design system will need to evolve. And I know at the time when we originally built what was Mango and then Graphite, I think we wanted to make it sort of brand change proof. So I think there was the consideration put into the design system, say, well, we need to evolve over time. How do we do so? But I think when you think about it, would you say if you were to change brand or even just sort of introduce some new elements, would you need to change all your componentry, or do you think a lot of that would still be able to carry forward in current iterations?
Well, that's the beauty of what we've built, really. It can carry forward to the extent that even the template can adjust itself for the co-branded experiences, like I mentioned, where they might actually have different brand colors, improve brand identity. Um, it's just a change. So we ended up having different palettes for the same components that you can actually just apply, and making sure it's consistent. And we've tested them from an accessibility perspective as well, because some of the brands had changes that we had to make sure that they work. Um, so that's the beauty of what we built. It's actually potentially something that will last with us for a long time, and just keep on adding to it and adjusting it as things change.
Excellent. All right, and I've just been told I can ask one last question, which you may or may not be able to answer, but I'll go for that. So, are the components built for a specific framework implementation, such as React, or using standard HTML, CSS, JS? Do you have an answer for that one? If not, we can get it later.
I think we'll need to get more details about this later, but to my knowledge, it's built on standard in the first instance. However, we do take some of the components into React specifically, especially for some of our key peak campaigns like Open Day and Orientation, where we build a lot of stuff on React. So I know that they complement each other, but in the first instance, the template is built on a standard approach.
Awesome. Amin, you are fantastic. I feel like I could keep going here for much, much longer, but I think that's all the time we have for today. For those that have submitted questions, we'll make sure that they get answered and actually shared out with everyone as well. But once again, Amin, I just want to thank you for your time. And the last thing I will say, so as I mentioned earlier, the recording will be made available for everyone, so you can get access to that. If you want to know more, please definitely reach out to our account management team or anyone at Squiz. We're more than happy to follow up with questions and help you out. Obviously, if you want to reach out to Amin as well, we'll organize that, and he can share some of that knowledge and experience that he's had for the university. If you're not a Squiz customer and you want to know more, you can email us at ask@squiz.net. But aside from that, once again, Amin, thank you very much. And please hold on the line for a survey that will come up as well.
Thanks
Thanks a
for
lot.
having me.
Cheers.